God damn it, New World. What have you done? What have you done? Because I've not played a game like this since my 5 a.m. RuneScape sessions that of course had me sleeping through chemistry class the following day as a kid. And yet, I don't think New World is a truly great game in some ways. It's a super playable game, once the queue passes and you can actually get in. You know, it's one of those games that in some ways feels like a total 6 out of 10, like a total average game. Average. That obscures why it's so damn playable, because yeah, the questing kinda sucks. I'd almost rather, mob and gather, grind for XP than do the quests. The combat is just okay, movement is okay, yet, why is it? Why is it that I just end up sitting there fishing until all my bait is gone, only to run around and scavenge even more bait from under all the flint, to then go and fish even more so that I have a bag full of fish? And I just do that again and suddenly it's 3 a.m. Well, that is the power of New World. Let's examine what the game is, what it isn't, how it really works for people, and also, hey, welcome to our new channel. It's all about MMORPGs and maybe a bit more, so hit up that sub button, and I guess it's YouTube, so I've got to say to smash the like button, and with that said, let's go. You know, in RuneScape, I wasn't PKing in Wild. I was gathering, I was crafting, and doing some castle wars. Furnishing my house, things like that. And in New World, that is what I've gravitated towards, and it is the root, I think, of much of the game's extreme playability for one slice of player. Gathering is just damn satisfying. You get this profound sense of usefulness, because you know the economy in this game is 100% player-driven. There's no NPCs to vendor items for, and other than the auction listing fee, there's no vendor sell price that sets the market price floor for an item. Each item can be used, and often in many ways. And man, whenever I first looked at cooking and got the scope of that, and it dawned on me, I felt both overwhelmed and excited. Combine that with how everything you do makes a number go up, so that the goopy gamer brain goes wahoo, and you've got this extremely compelling early game crafting and gathering experience. And when you're there, it's like New World, it's lavishly detailed. There's shit everywhere to pick up, right? There's just loads of density and most of it can be gathered. Every trek through the world is full of welcome distractions. You're going to do a quest, but oh, you spot an iron vein in the distance. And on your way, you come upon some cranberries or maybe some hemp. And you just find yourself wandering around for hours on end, picking shit up, watching your gathering skills increase. And if you're like me, well, knowing that you really, want to get them all to 50 before you sort of take the main quest and go into a more high-level area, and then you're thinking about, oh, there's a blue tree over there, and when I get to 100 logging or whatever, I can go for the blue tree, and that'll give me some cool new stuff, and it goes on and on. So basically, it's the simple things, really. For an example, your early days are spent chopping down young trees for green wood. Each time your logging level goes up initially, you get 5% more logging speed until it slows down big time after level 20. But then before long, well, you can cut down those mature trees that have been taunting you for so long, and then you take them back to town, you process them into, some lumber, and bam! You've got loads of woodworking levels, and your woodworking has went up. Or maybe you notice that wood is on the current town project board's quest list, meaning loads of players will want that wood, and then you list your wood in the trading post, and you end up making a pretty penny off the lazy. All of this made my woodcutting experience satisfying. And all the time, I was doing this, completing project board quests for the town I was in. That made me a tiny bit of gold, it increased my character's skills, it ranked me up with the zone that I was in, which confers a bunch of benefits, including things like being able to buy a house in that area. What do I do with all that wood? Well, again, I know there's the player housing system. I know that soon enough I can work out how to make a wooden chest for people's houses, and that chest will increase people's storage capacity in that town, and maybe that's the town that they really like doing the trading post on. Oh, a money-making opportunity has been identified. And all of this is stuff that's happened to me before I've hit the higher levels and the more complex crafting that comes with the higher levels. For me, this is the bit of the game that's really worked. I feel like I can participate in the economy. And as I get more used to the game, I feel like I can do well. I can do maybe market arbitrage, comparing trading post costs in different regions, or perhaps learning the markets, actually learning the intrinsic value of the in-game items and being able to play the trading post accordingly. Because the game's not prescriptive, right? The economy is something that feels real because the pricing of items is truly felt out by players. This is where the new world fantasy of this pretty much works out perfectly. It does feel like a new world. You do feel like an explorer, and the game mechanics support that. There is a con to that, I suppose. It's not like you're going into a rich established world like that of RuneScape, where you can go to Varrock or Camelot and, see a big cool town, or maybe a Stormwind or an Orgrimmar. It maybe suffers from those issues that WildStar suffered from, where it genuinely is a frontier, places don't feel established, and that sort of thing. But the actual new world and explorer fantasy here is very successfully just earned by the game mechanics. And that means that there's no doubt that for many, the deep crafting, gathering, and economy are a humongous selling point for this game. It's what I'm drawn into. It just feels like there's a powerful sense of aspiration with that. Because gold is so valuable, thanks to the markets being, pretty much just free to the players to go around with, it feels way better trying to fit in with the world's economy than it does, and this is where we get to the interesting bit, any sort of main quest stuff. With wealth comes basically any advantage you could want, thanks to how they've actually set up items, settlements, and houses. Items are obvious. Gear, potions, and food are all highly valuable things. Houses can give you extra storage and a sorely needed fast travel point, and the right trophies in your house unlock bonuses to damage, gathering, and crafting luck. Then there are settlements. A company with full coffers can purchase lots of benefits for an area, making their hold on a settlement even tighter, but more pleasant for the people in it. Low taxes and upgraded settlements make for a happy population, so the company and its governor will get to keep control. Meanwhile then, a player with a ton of wealth can become invaluable to a company. They will pay lots of taxes through their existing market activity and, of course, owning an expensive house, as well as providing services to other players. And of course, if the taxes are too high, well, then the wealthy players are going to move their operations elsewhere, or maybe even help encourage or fund a coup. These are the elements of New World that truly shine, or at least theoretically. Only time will tell there, but we are off to a good enough start. Even just seeing some of the people in the company that I am in talking about striking up an alliance with another company, and all of these companies in the same faction trying to keep control of this one zone and work out their next moves, that stuff is cool. So, what then about the less good aspects of this game? Questing serves a role, but I think if you were to look at it objectively, it does kinda suck, and for a variety of reasons. They're essentially all the same quest, either kill a few enemies or loot a few chests. These quests are mostly picked up from NPCs flagged on your map, or from the town project board, and from the faction NPCs. For a quick TLDR, basically, you can contribute to a town's development and get some XP and influence and stuff in return by doing the project board quests. There is way more to this system than I've experienced as, at least initially, a more solo player, but essentially companies are analogous to guilds. A company can own a region and have a governor for a town. When they do, they can basically sign off on projects. These are things that will, upgrade a town's facilities, or even the likes of setting the tax rate for various activities. People in that company and faction get more than a few perks, and via the setting of tax, of course, companies can earn a lot of gold from that whole thing. Most players will probably engage in this system as mindless drone workers, but for those who own the companies and play within the company system, it's pretty neat. Insert default joke about Amazon here. Jokes aside, that's all a great incentive to join a company and get engaged in that type of play, and more of the game's PvP. I've not done much of the PvP myself. Matt did a little more, so we'll talk about that. But to go back to questing, it is boring. but it can feel meaningful, as you'll always be progressing your weapon skills and gathering things. A quest almost just gives you a reason to go out into the world and then do things on your way to the quest waypoint, I suppose. I can see why they've done this in favor of going for a more RuneScape-like mob grind situation, but I do think it could be far, far better. I mean, an immediate improvement would be fixing up the UI, because you can only pin 8 quests at once, but between side quests and the project board and faction quests, you'll have way more than 8. And that just means that it's more of a pain in the ass to actually manage and, path your way through the world and work out what you're doing, and that's pretty annoying, just making it a more fiddly experience to officially work out what you're doing. I would just say, let us track more, right? You don't even have to make the quest tracking UI larger, just let us scroll it somehow. It's just hard to communicate how needlessly frustrating that and a few other small little elements are. Well, that's questing done. Let's talk about combat. Combat is mostly boring in PvE. I started, as many do, spamming left click. You can just batter your way through mobs, and as long as you've eaten some health food, your health regen will keep you right. It feels mindless, but at least you're smashing faces and leveling your weapons. I mean, I could even do it on a laptop trackpad that kept on conking out halfway through. That'll explain any real whack gameplay you see. Combat does take a turn for the mixed, though, when you try to just play by the designer's intent, methodically blocking and dodging and playing well. I mean, first, doing so just feels slower. Second, it's not tight. I respect doing actiony combat in an MMO, but there's times where, there's 40 to 60 ping on either side, and it just makes it feel loose. Also, animation recovery time to, exit an attack and enter a block is pretty high, so if you're like me and you put loads of gameplay time, or at least a decent bit, into parry-based combat systems like Sekiro and Tsushima, I mean, you'll feel like an utter imbecile for a bit. Now, things do get a bit better when you look at those skill trees. Abilities are incredible, but I can appreciate the design that has went into them. You can work your way toward a satisfying build. It's just that the combat itself fundamentally is just okay. It is serviceable, meaning that, it can't carry the game on its own. No one will play New World for the combat. But it can be a serviceable, functional part of an overall game that is better than it. That's if the overall game, of course, is more than the sum of its parts. And indeed, much of making a great game is just that. Now, in PvP, it's a lot more enjoyable, but not because the combat is suddenly great. It's that the bad parts no longer matter as much. You can kind of enjoy and master the awkwardness. Matt had a great analogy, in that it feels like Dark Souls PvP in essence. Having your role to play in a group fight feels excellent, though, that's the one thing I will say. Like medieval combat reenactment, but with, ranged weapons that you can use and a bit of magic. Doesn't always feel the most balanced, but that doesn't matter because it is so free form. And when we mention the Dark Souls thing, it's more just because the Dark Souls PvP is janky as hell, but it's kind of thematically neat, and even though it's clunky, it works. So in general, it feels like a completely different game to the PvE side or the economic side of the game, and it's a good enough time, at least if you can actually get invited to a war. The PvP missions are about as bad as the PvE missions, but they're just a vehicle to contest things out in the world, and succeeding grants influence, which then, if you get enough of it, can allow you to declare a war, and those are the wars that decide what faction and what company are in control of a zone. So you can see it coming together, can't you? Governors, bankers, strategists, crafters, tacticians, the humble gatherer and the humble soldier. Everyone has a role to play in New World. Right now, we're at the stage of possibility, of sprawling crafting trees, new settlements to push towards, companies to create, wars to fight. We can see ourselves within that. The master angler who gets all of the expensive special ingredients, the master armorer, the potion master who is beloved by all the tanks and all the companies, the badass with a life staff who nails every single healing skill shot in PvP. The trouble is how long this will last. There are some questions. Is this an overly solved game? Will the territorial back and forth be enough to keep people around? Will it turn out that this is enough to make a compelling sandbox that just keeps people around because they care about their company and they care about New World? I think for some people, yeah, but generally to have a large enough player base, I think this game is going to need just constant content, constant expansion. Lots of things. More gathering, more crafting, larger player houses with new systems to drive gathering, crafting, and self-expression based gameplay. It's going to need all of that. I think especially to get the kind of, in a way, because it is one of those games, sort of peasant class, to be around and to do all of that labor that then kind of funds the people who are really pulling the strings because, well, New World. It's a world, and that's a part of that world. Potentially more endgame PvE content would be a good thing. It doesn't seem like the game's got a large focus on that, and it seems to be just kind of okay. I'll say that isolated in my compulsive gathering and crafting bubble, even I've had this nagging feeling. A feeling that says, to what end? As I continue with New World, this is what I want to figure out. Objectively, I do think this game is like a 6 out of 10. But the experience of it, to me, is well above that. Because it is more than the sum of its parts. That is the bit that matters. But will it continue to be? And will it suffer from the one thing that'll kill an MMO? The glass shattering. Because that happens to both sandboxes and theme parks. As for me, well, I'm kept happy by easy to understand progression. Kind of as I was in Valheim. But those of us who play MMOs know that can only last for so long sometimes. For me, it's a pity that the queue issues have really held the progress back so much. I would have loved to have got way further. For now, I'll say I am in my happy spot with this game. I just don't know how long that will last, but now that me and Matt are playing together, and we've joined a company, and that company's talking about forming an informal alliance with another company, and there's only one part of the world on my server that my faction owns, I have to admit, I am feeling a little bit more invested in that, and that can only be a good thing. There you have it. That is our first New World video. If you would like to check out our first Final Fantasy XIV video, we just published it on this channel yesterday. We're going to have another video on this channel tomorrow. So hit that sub button, stay around. Big content train, it's going to be fun. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.